Well, hello, and welcome to my cellar. One of the comments from last week was that they couldn't wait for my 200th. Well, this is it. Sorry to disappoint. No band, no confetti. Just a stunned disbelief that I've done this so many times. Good Lord. All right, we'll just plunge right in. I don't remember where this all started. Okay, I wonder if you have any insight on dwarves being resistant to magical effects. I get that in D&D 1E, dwarves didn't care for magic, but the fact that they don't use magic didn't ever make sense, that it made them resistant to magical effects. Any insight on that? Well, there's a lot of fiction and a good deal of folklore that supports that antipathy towards magic by dwarves. Dwarves didn't believe in magic. Magic was performed by the Fae. Now, this is a consolidation of a lot of European mythos. You'd be surprised. And it's a general vein that seems to run through a great deal of them. Dwarves were of the earth. They mined in the earth. They cherished iron and gold and silver and gems and all those things, and had no use for magic, because magic was practiced by those ditzy, giddy, not serious Fae on the surface. This theme is very prevalent in a lot of mythos and a boatload of books. There's a lot of different books that have taken. Now, whether they chose to take it from the mythos because they chose to take it in their head because of something else they read somewhere else, I have no idea. I'm not going to I don't like analyzing authors. Made that clear before. But when Gary laid out the basic character, or the basic classes and the basic races, he took prevailing wisdom, prevailing mythos, if you will. If he'd had his way, the elves would not have been anything like Tolkien's elves. They'd have been much more chaotic and like wood elves or forest elves or rock elves, or something that was not the goody two-shoes of Tolkien. Even Elrond, with his haughtiness and that, still was, a goody two-shoes who thought he was superior anyway. Magic didn't affect them very much. They had no use for it. They were of the earth. If you go back to creation mythos and several, dwarves are of the earth. That's why orcs were also of the mud, a abomination, transformation, if you will, of mocking. If it didn't affect them, they had no use for it. They hadn't. I believe that in my the understanding that I use, if it didn't have much effect on them because they had no affinity for it. Just like you have to be willing to be hypnotized or glamored or charmed or whatever in this our real world hypnosis or powerful suggestion. If it didn't work on them, it's because they didn't have an affinity for it. They didn't believe in it. their creation mythos, their work ethic, whatever, didn't deal with it, couldn't handle it, wasn't adapted to it, or didn't allow for it. Okay, looking to run Snake... Oh, God, here we go. Looking to run Snake Riders and have a question regarding the defense rating for the NPCs. A defense of 50% indicates that it's a perfect but unmodified roll indicates success. Well, I'm going to take half a cop out here. And then we'll go on to the rest of the comment. One of the principals in Eldritch, who deemed himself an act as chief amongst equals, decided that he didn't want to get involved with the OGL, which was stupid and foolish. There's just a list of monsters you can't use, and you got to put a bunch of crap in front of the book. So what? I didn't care anyway, because boulets aren't on the prohibited list of monsters. I didn't care. But he did. Didn't want to become a slave to the OGL. Very misplaced thinking. So we had to come up with a set of a way of statting creatures and characters that did not use exactly the same dice and the same names, and whatever for the stats. So we came up with a conversion system that you could convert to most anything that was OSR. And the rule of thumb always that in these percentage rolls, the percentages were based upon the fact that an average human was 1 to 5%. Therefore, if its strength was 30%, it was 6 times stronger than the average human. So now you can apply that to your dice however you want to do it. We were hoping that, and I'm happy to say we got better at it as we went on. We were hoping that DMs could, with our gentle prodding and guidance, figure out a way to play it in their system. We were trying to be a universal system that fit everything. And in a lot of places it worked, and a lot of places it didn't, and that's why we changed it. Now, going on this, same one. Power, related to power, is 50% is something like 10 hit dice. Well, that would depend on, again, power being, if an average human was 1 to 5%, we'll give them all, 5%ers. And maybe Conan was an 8, okay, or a 10 even. If that were the case, well, they would be that many times. How many was that? 50%, 10. It could be half of what normal power range is in your campaign. If you have stuff that has 20 hit dice, okay, you can use that scale. Again, balancing. We were trying to. We got better at it. Look up. Go read my Curse of the Weaver Queen. See, I didn't do this. I wrote everything for my version of D&D, which is, somewhere between old school and first edition. And that's how I statted everything I wrote. And my partners had to hash it into this. And we didn't always do so well at that. Sorry. Do what you think it means. It's a very dangerous adventure, not to be taken lightly. Just a point regarding the magic missile. It won't work on something with magic resist that resists it either. A lot of critters have magic resistance, particularly drow, master jelly, divas, Mihailsu, in the monster manual too. Okay, that's Point noted. However, let me read something to you. From the Player's Handbook. I have to put my glasses on so I get this correct. I have a lot of props here. It's going to be very visual tonight. I'm just trying not to knock anything off before I need it. Magic Missile, page 67. Under saving throw, none. None. No saving throw. In Tim's world, in Tim's interpretation of the original rules, no saving throw means it always hits. If you can't avoid it, it hits you. Now, it still does this 2 to 5 missiles and crap. I still play that it always hits for 1 to 3 points of damage, and it got somehow or other it didn't come out that way. I thought I'd won that argument all these years and found out no, I hadn't actually. Some stinker. Anyhow, so magic resistance, that's up to the DM to decide how that works. If something always hits and it's magic and they're magic resistance, it still hits. How hard it hits, that'd be up to you. It always hits. There's no saving throw. All right. There are also very readily available options in first edition to avoid magic missile as well, such as a level 1 shield spell and magic items. Certainly. But without any of that, it hits and there's no saving throw. If you have a magic shield and it still gets around it, there's no saving throw. It hits. Period. That's my world. You can play it any way you like, and that's okay. It's all good. Okay. Apologies for asking questions to cause you to repeat topics. No, it's okay. If I didn't want to repeat them, I wouldn't. I found the topic of alignment, and I find the topic of alignment endlessly fun to talk about, and it's one thing that has never really changed. I would say, in play, a character with a code is predictable. Right. Predictable. Lawful. That's it. He enjoyed my answer, and it helped him flesh it out in his head. Well, that's great. I'm always glad to help. That's why I'm here. I have 3 alignments in my campaign: law, neutral, and chaos. Chaos represents those who side with dark gods, demons, and you name it. Law hates the formerly mentioned chaos. Neutral is not interested in either. Translates easily for a lot of settings, such as vampire. Camarilla equal law, anarch equal neutral, Sabbat would equal chaos. I can't say this enough. However it works for you, and your players are into it and all that, that's great. There are so many ways you can handle this, based on what you've played in with other people, based on what you've read, the books that that have influenced you, movies that have influenced you. Lawful was always meant to be predictable. They followed laws of behavior. Lawful did not mean Hammurabi and his code. That's not what it meant. I know it's one of those, perhaps there could have been a better word chosen back then. I don't know. I can't even think of one, having used this word for so many years now. But anyway. Next page. Okay. Curious as to your thoughts, speculation, on if Don K. would have not had his unexpected death. How do you think he would have influenced the early years of TSR? And also, since TSR D&D became an overnight success, quotes, if there had been more business-related professionals that had experience with large corporation management hired, do you think history would have reflected a different late 70s, early 80s for TSR and its growth and conflicts that arose? All right. As to Don K., Gary was pretty sure that I probably never met Don. What Gary has said of Don was that Don was, he liked to play. He was a minis player, a boards player. He liked to play. Of course, there wasn't a role-playing at the time. And Gary had some rules to publish, and Don liked the idea, and he had some money to put into it. And, okay, now, had Don not died, I don't know if anybody can say what might have happened. Anything might have happened. Don, I might not have been hired. Who knows? Don didn't happen to have any of the skills that I had and had gone to school for, but I don't know, maybe not. Had different management been in charge, would there have been a difference? Yeah, now it's easy in hindsight to say that, but in hindsight, you can see that it would have had to have been different if somebody with more savvy had been in charge of the financial end and had the clout or the wherewithal to say this is where it needs, this is what it needs, this is how it should be. Brian had an undue influence, and when Kevin came on board, it was always 2-1. And I don't believe Gary was able to stand up to them as much as he might have liked to. And I don't say that as a knock on Gary. And I'm not really saying it as a knock on the Blooms. They thought alike because they were brothers. I thought they thought badly or wrong, or some of their ideas were proven to be pretty harebrained. Had it been somebody else? Well, certainly. If, for instance, Don K. hadn't died and Don K. had a CPA background or an accounting background or whatever, yeah. Somebody with formal training, yeah. I don't believe Brian ever had any formal training. He just told Gary when he bought in, I can handle that end of it. And Gary naively let him do it and said, okay. That's my opinion. This is only my opinion. Not trying to besmirch anybody that's dead. This is what I saw, or how I saw it. I still think that D&D, given when it launched and how it launched, and all the social, all the societal and cultural things that were going on, I think it wouldn't have, whether Don was there or not, probably wouldn't have made any difference. Okay, here's an interest. I love some of these questions. Here's food for thought. Can heroes eat dragons? Some many years past, I heard a radio drama in which a knight defeated a dragon, bathed in its blood, and ate its heart. This conferred power to the knight. How do you feel about sympathetic meal magic? Well, that tale of a hero defeating a dragon is one of hundreds Some very, very, very old, and some written last week. It's interesting. If I were to do some, require something like that, I'd make it some sort of geas that the person had to go kill it and bathe in its blood and then eat its heart. And whether or not I allowed it to, inherit or absorb any of the dragon's skills, abilities, or powers, I don't know. I would only be speculating right now at this moment. Have no idea how I'd handle that. I guess it all depends on the prevailing ethic or ethos, if you will, of your world and your campaign. Many cultures have taboo meats. Many cultures have no taboos whatsoever, depending upon where they grew, where they evolved, where they came from, if you will. Many cultures, particularly more what we would consider primitive, will eat things that civilized people would shudder at. Eating the heart, well, there's many cultures that ate the hearts of their enemies because they felt it gave them their power and their strength. Now, if you're going to get into the fine hair splitting of D&D and alignment, and the victorious knight is good, lawful and good, and, on a holy quest, and the dragon was evil and vile and corrupted, and he had to eat some of the heart, I might have fun with that. Now, even as I just said that, I can think of 2 or 3 ways I could screw around with a person when they did that. Some permanent, some not so. I don't know. It's a possibility. Whether or not they can do it would be entirely dependent upon the. Maybe lizard or dragon is a dietary prohibition. There's lots of cultures that prohibit pork. And there's other cultures that prohibit certain birds or snakes or whatever. So, I don't know, you'd have to throw all that in your mix too. Could, certainly. Remember, it's fantasy. Anything can happen. The whole cop-out. All right. Since you had to go there with spinach eaters and Popeye and all that, managed to market a green leaf. Oh, all right. About time to market something along the lines of iron rations to D&D gamers. I'm thinking nutritious, delicious black bean tempeh with shredded kale and spinach and all sorts of delicious, nutritious hemp seed sprouts, nut and cheese mixed together in patties and packaged for the long-haul adventures. They should dish that out on the food trucks or whatever concession vendors at the convention. Imagine Wisconsin vegan bratwurst made of all that. No, I can't. Thank you very much. I don't want to. Bratwurst is made with meat. I'm not vegan. And what you describe in there sounds like a punishment you're forced to eat by your parents. No, thank you. I like the idea of something like pemmican. Okay, for a live stream, you wouldn't have to type. You type, and you talk, and we type at you. And then the next comment was, yeah, but then they have to read them. Well, yeah, the way some of you people type when you have time, It takes from even the way when I try to type quickly, and I'm a quote writer, editor, proofreader, and I'm terrible too. I don't even know how I go about doing it. Maybe after the first of the year, I'll look into doing something like that. Maybe I'll get Wampler to do one with me. That'd be fun. Okay, man, people get too hung up on realism in D&D. Yeah, it's a good metric for baseline, only for mundane, minor things. But it's the adventures that is important, not getting hung up on pedantics. I agree. If D&D was realistic, every PC would have to spend 75% of their treasure on PTSD counseling. It's a game. Games are meant to be fun. Do whatever you want as long as you're having fun. If you're coming up with stuff that takes away the fun, you're missing the point. I like the comment of the 75% for PTSD, but I would argue that, or I would add that they would be spending a whole lot of. They would probably be spending on 75% of their income on medical care, both counseling and actually getting bandaged up, and therapy, and learning to heal, and how can I swing my axe when I've had the tendons in my arms chewed up? Yeah, it's a good thing it's not realistic. That's the whole thing. You got to remember, it's not realistic. You can't have some of it be realistic, and then others not. That's hardly equitable. You just got to go with, yeah, it's not realistic. All right, here's a bargain hunter. $8.99 for 9 was a good bargain for all 9 issues of Adventure Gaming magazine. Thank you. Buying that was the best I could do, given all the freebie digital stuff I'm prone to scavenge. And this is one of the people that makes a lot of pedantic compliments. But yeah, he refers to Mudpuppy Games had a Black Freaky Friday weekend thing, where there are 9 issues of the 13 that were published of Adventure Gaming have now been scanned to PDFs, and they were on a half-price sale. I imagine sometime after the first of the year we'll get the last 4 on, and then all 13 will be up. Okay. I love some of the questions I get. Are dragons favorite foods heroes? Do dragons prefer the taste of good doers over the taste of cruel hearts? Is a knight's armor just a layer like the shell of an M&M? I don't know. There again, think of the movies that you've seen. Think of the stories you've read. There's a series that's set in roughly Napoleonic period that have where dragons exist, and the lead character is called Temeraire, Temeraire, I believe, and there's several books out, and they're quite good. And the very high-ranking genetically and hierarchically dragons can mind speak with their riders, and no, Temeraire didn't care much. They were, bony, gristly, whatever. Whereas and this is just one mythos. Whereas the lesser advanced ones, the stupider ones, ate anything came along. A man was just as good as a sheep, bigger, better. I don't know. Your world, you might have a you might have a dragon that has a taste for prize beef. And it's eating all the bulls. And if you live in an area that relies on their cattle industry, well, that's a serious problem and should be dealt with. You could have a dragon that really had a thing for seals and walruses. And if you're in a civilization, in a setting where that's a main food supply, sure. I believe that most animal behaviorists would tell you that the predators have favored foods, whether it's meat to gristle ratio or ease of catching or whatever. I couldn't say, but yeah, cool, sure, why not? And is a knight's armor just a layer like the shell of a M&M candy? Or is it like the Alcoa wrap around the burrito that you throw in the oven to heat up? Cook them in their armor. If it's plate, you cook them in their armor. If it's chain, you put some really dandy sear marks on them. No, I know, that was terrible. My version of the plains largely follows the Kabbalah tree of life. It also comes as a convenient explanation where magic for wizards and clerics come from. Wizards open paths to each of the Sephira, while the gods give clarity to clerics and shows them to access different horizontal levels of the Kabbalah. Great. I think that sounds pretty ingenious, actually. And again, it's all in what the group understands. And if they understand the way it works, swell. Okay, let's see. I had some stuff here. Okay. This is the last one. And this one actually was sent on a Facebook thing, but I said I'd answer it here. I know you still paint minis, and I'd really like to know what paints you prefer and what brushes and tools. Well, nowadays, I've been painting a whole lot of ships. This is a third rater. That's 2 classes above a frigate. It came in pieces. There's 64 cannons to paint. So I've been painting this. So that's a little bitty brush. And big brushes. Figure-wise, I've been painting some Otherworld miniatures from England. Really, really great stuff. To start, painting is, depending upon what you're painting, metal or plastic, you still need to use a primer. A primer gives you a surface for your real paint, your hue, your tint, gives it a surface to adhere to. It also neutralizes what the color was beforehand. When you're doing plastics, and it's printed in a gray plastic, and you don't want the gray influencing your colors, then you're going to use a flat white primer. When you're working in dark colors, use a gray primer. If you're working in darks, why not? You'll be pleased with what you get. Paints. Well, when I used to use Conquest paints. I loved them to death. The company's out of business now, and that's a shame. They had 80, 90 different colors. Great stuff. So when I went back to painting, I went out and I bought a set of Army Painter paints, one of their basic, 18 paints or whatever. And used them a little, and then I was given a bunch of Reaper paints by both Reaper and an individual who was a painter and just sent me a whole tub of duplicates and stuff. And I have a couple of Vallejos, and I have 2 AK something or other. And I started painting with the Army Painter stuff, and I wasn't all that happy with it. I've used Army Painter spray primer. I have both their flat white and their flat gray. Again, lighter, dark colors. And I still find their primer to be excellent. I've not found a better one. But for paints, I've come to really appreciate the Reaper series. I like their consistency. I like their mixability. And I'm not by any means a skillful mixer, but even I can muddle about and get pretty close to what I was going for. I like the texture out of the little squirt nozzle, because I can air the thickness, because then I can thin it myself if that's what I choose to do if I'm doing a wash. I have some Army. I have a couple 3 colors of Army. Colors are a big. For me, colors are a big deal on what I use. If I just can't get that shade of noxious green in a Reaper, but Army Painter has it, well, then I'll buy it in Army Painter, or I'll buy it in Vallejo. I've used, I think I've used 2 colors of Vallejo. They were fine. I can't speak to anything beyond that. I can speak to the Reaper paints. And I can really speak to the little Reaper plastic box beginner set. And there's they have one for beginning painters and then one for the next step in painting, and those are really nice. And they give you a really nice thing to carry your paint around in. I'm able to stash all mine in my boxes, put it on a tray, and slide it out of the way when my wife wants the round table that I otherwise paint on. So if I had to recommend, I'd say you probably can't go wrong with Reaper paints. Now, conversely, when it comes to washes, I have yet to find anything better than Army Painters. All 3 of the washes of theirs that I have are really, really good washes. I've tried a few others, and they're the best washes. And boy, what a mild wash will do to your painted figure. A lot of your little tiny glitches and boo-boos disappear. Details pop out. Now, brushes. These are the ones I'm using right now. This is my one that sits down off below my right elbow. I have to put my glasses on so I can read some of these. My advice on brushes, and I'm not a real, really skillful painter, and I had to give it up for a long time when my eyes went bad and I got cataracts and stuff. But I've painted a whole lot more of those ships than I wanted to. And I'm painting miniatures again for fun. Brushes, for me, I look for the least I can spend for the job I expect the brush to do. Let me explain that here. I've got one here. I can never remember their name. I should. And somebody gave me one recently, and Winsor & Newton. Now, if you go into many an art store and say, I want to see your good brushes, Winsor & Newton, they're going to take you to, if not first, within the top 2 or 3. Now, buying our kind of brushes for painting figures is not easy in an art store, because they're more into fan brushes and larger brushes, and they're more into oils and acrylics on canvas or board, not oils or acrylics on plastic or now pewter, old ones lead. So if you're doing what I call gross painting, I say slopping, putting on a covering base coat of your base color. For instance, when I was doing the ship, the base color, this is a French third rater, by the way, the base color was black, because the stripes that went on, and those are one of the AK colors that I find, the striping went on over the top to give me what I wanted to do. Well, when I was doing the hull black, I used a much larger brush. When I was doing the stripes, I used a much smaller brush, obviously. So brushes are what you can find in your local art supply store, what you can afford. I bought a set of brushes on Facebook a while back, had these funny triangular handles that are pretty good buy. Are they going to last forever? No. Did I spend a lot? No. Do they work well? Yes. If you're looking for small, the art store is going to start diminishing as a possible source of what you're looking for. Now you're going to be going to the craft stores and the hobby shops. Brands of brushes. And a couple of these may not even be made anymore, okay? But I have brushes here that are 45 years old by Floquil, Floquil. Tika, Teka. Tika used to do everything in zeros. A 2-0 was one size, a 4-0 was smaller, 10-0 was the smallest one. That was about 8 hairs, and that's what we painted eyebrows onto 25 millimeter soldiers with. I've found some decent. I found these. I can't remember if I found these in a craft store or a hobby shop. They have a distinctive marbly green shaft, and the name is. Let me get a magnifier. It's late and dark. Disadvantage of being in the cellar. Royal and Langnickel. It's got this green handle. These were it was a set, rather inexpensive, and they've held up surprisingly well. Surprisingly well. And, holding up means, you take care to clean them. Now, Reaper makes some brushes that are a good buy for the money. They're not really expensive. And they make brushes in I believe there's 3 or 4 sizes. I got 3 of them sent to me when they sent me some paints. And Army Painter makes brushes, and there's 2 Army Painter brushes that I really want to point out. In the Army Painter, they have the triangular barrels, which once you get used to them are actually pretty good for fine work. Now they have one of them here, and it's called Fine Detail, I think it's called. And then they have another one. Now the Fine Detail has that many threads on the hairs on the tip. Then they have one called, and it's got so few that I don't take the cap off when I'm using it, the Psycho. Here, I'll put this up against something white so you can see what I'm talking about. Psycho has a tiny, tiny tip on it. And it's what I painted all the cannon carriages on those ships with, was the Psycho. That's an exceptional brush for small detail. The Army painter brushes aren't cheap, but I think the two that I have are good value for the money I paid for it. Go to your craft stores. I bought some of these with the blue handles. They're cheapos. They're fine if you're doing a non-spray primer, not much else. You can use them a couple, 3 times, and then the brush, the hairs, starts to lose its definition. They start spreading out. Again, brush choices are what you want to pay, what you're going to do with them, the type of paint you're going to use. Everybody should use washes. Washes add so much detail so easily. They really make figures pop. If you're not washing your figures, you should be. I know that I'm blanking. The one company sells 3, and oh man, it's late. It's going on 2. One company sells 3 that I use, and Reaper sells the other 2. The Wargame painters, theirs are the best. You should use them. You'd be amazed what a wash will do if you don't use one now. And they make some pretty interesting light washes too, not just dark washes. Those are the paints I like. Someday somebody sends me a bunch of some other company's paints to try out. I'll do it. But right now I'm happy with the paints I got and that I use. And that's really just, find a paint you like that you can afford. Bottom line. I still have 8 or 10 bottles, all the metallics, that the old Ral Partha paints, that then Iron Wind inherited the stock of. And their metallics were quite good. Quite good. Rest of the colors were, not bad, not good, but the metallics were quite good. And I've still got 8 jars of all their metallic colors. And I still use them on occasion when I need a good, strong metallic. All right, I've nattered on long enough. This is the end of the 200th one, winding down to an embarrassing finish. See, holidays are coming up. I won't do one the weekend of see, what weekend is that? Yeah, I won't do one on the 24th. I will do one on the next 2 weeks, the 10th and the 17th. I won't do one on the 24th. I probably won't do one on New Year's either. In the meantime, support your friendly local game store. Buy game presents for all your friends. And I'll see you next time. Dodada Govi.
Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's a curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. DSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.